When you stop contacting a woman, something powerful happens. At first, she'll notice the silence, the missing texts, the unanswered calls, the sudden void, and in that quiet, her mind begins to race. But here's the truth most men never understand. The moment you pull away isn't always the end. It's the test. A test of her emotions, her ego, and her true feelings for you. When you stop contacting a woman, the silence that follows is far more powerful than most men realize. It's not just an absence of words. It's a psychological shift, an invisible mirror that reveals everything hidden beneath the surface. Silence has a way of stripping away illusions. It removes the noise, the comfort, the distractions, and what's left is the truth of her emotions. When you no longer reach out, you give her space to feel the weight of your absence. And that's when you truly see who she is and what you meant to her. At first, she might seem unaffected. She might even post more on social media, appear busy, or act like she's moving on effortlessly. But underneath that surface, something deeper begins to stir. When you were constantly available, she knew where to place you. She had the comfort of your attention, the security of your presence. The human mind gets addicted to familiarity, especially when it comes from someone who offers emotional validation. Once that energy is gone, the mind starts to crave it again. This is where the truth begins to show. A woman who is emotionally invested in you will start to feel the silence as a loss, while one who was only entertained by your attention will simply fill the gap with someone else. Silence, therefore, becomes the great revealer. It's not a tactic to manipulate, but a reflection of self-respect. When a man stops contacting a woman, he's communicating something without words. I am not dependent on your response for my peace. That message alone carries a deep psychological impact. Women are highly intuitive and emotionally aware. They can sense when a man withdraws from a place of dignity versus desperation. The first makes her respect you more. The second makes her pull further away. If her feelings were genuine, she will begin to think. She'll recall your conversations, your efforts, your consistency. She'll ask herself what changed, not just in your behavior, but in her own. And if she truly values you, she will miss not just the messages, but the emotional energy you brought into her life. This is when many women start to reach out, sometimes subtly, sometimes directly, just to see if you still care. That's not manipulation. It's emotional curiosity. Your silence forces her to confront what she took for granted. On the other hand, if she was never emotionally invested, your silence won't disturb her. She won't ask, won't chase. And that's exactly the clarity you need. Many men stay trapped in confusion because they keep chasing communication, trying to force connection through constant contact. But when you let go, you allow the truth to surface naturally. Silence does the work that words never could. It's also important to understand that silence isn't about punishment or ego. It's about energy alignment. You can't pour into someone who doesn't value your presence. You can't grow emotionally when you're always overextending yourself. Pulling away gives you perspective. It reminds you of your worth and reveals whether she's capable of meeting you halfway. In psychology, detachment is often seen as a sign of emotional maturity. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop forcing. You respect the natural flow of human connection. A woman who truly admires you will recognize that energy and respond with sincerity. One who doesn't will fade away. And that's perfectly fine because silence helped you uncover what words could never make clear. So when you stop contacting her, don't see it as losing her. See it as discovering the truth. Silence, when used with purpose and peace, will always reveal who's real and who was only there for convenience. And once you understand that, you'll never fear losing someone again, because the one meant for you will never need your silence to remember your worth. When you stop contacting a woman, your silence becomes more than just a lack of communication. It becomes a test, not a game, not manipulation, but a deep psychological test that reveals what's truly beneath the surface of her emotions. Every relationship, whether romantic or emotional, reaches a point where one person pulls back. And when that happens, the response from the other side shows the depth of their feelings. When you withdraw your energy, you are unknowingly testing not her patience, but her intentions. You're testing the strength of the emotional bond, the authenticity of her affection, and her capacity to value you without constant attention. A woman's mind reacts strongly to emotional shifts when she's used to hearing from you every day. Your sudden silence triggers a wave of questions. Why did he stop calling? Did I do something wrong? Has he lost interest? This is where the test begins. How she handles those thoughts says everything. If she's truly connected to you, she won't allow her ego to control her response. She'll reach out. She'll ask. She'll try to understand. Her actions will come from a place of care. But if she's emotionally immature or only attached to the validation your attention provided, she'll react with pride. She'll pretend she doesn't care. She'll mirror your silence, not out of strength, but out of fear of appearing weak. That's the power of emotional testing. It separates genuine feelings from surface level attraction. Most men fail to recognize this stage and rush to fill the silence because they can't handle the discomfort. They assume her quiet means she's gone. But in reality, this space is where the truth unfolds. Your absence allows her to confront her own emotions. If she values you, she'll feel compelled to bridge the distance. If she doesn't, she'll use your silence as a reason to justify detachment. Either way, you get the clarity you need. In psychology, this is often tied to the concept of emotional equilibrium. When one person suddenly withdraws emotional input, the other's subconscious attempts to restore balance. This can happen through reflection, guilt, or effort. The emotional test exposes whether her need for balance is driven by love or ego. A woman who respects and admires you will not be comfortable with distance. She'll sense that something valuable is slipping away and will want to fix it. But one who only enjoyed your attention, not your presence, will move on to the next source of emotional stimulation. The key for men is to understand that this test works both ways. When you stop contacting her, you are also testing yourself, your patience, your discipline, your sense of self-worth. Can you remain centered without her validation? Can you stay confident without knowing how she feels? That inner stability is what makes your silence powerful. It turns you from someone who chases reassurance into someone who commands respect. A woman's emotional test isn't something you control consciously, but your reaction to it defines the outcome. If you break silence too early out of fear, you fail the test yourself. But if you maintain composure and give space for truth to surface, you allow the situation to unfold authentically. And authenticity always reveals more than words ever could. When you stop contacting her and she starts to feel that emotional gap, she has two choices: reflect or replace. If she reflects, it means there's emotional depth. If she replaces, it means there never was. Either outcome brings you closer to truth. Your silence becomes a mirror, one that shows both her character and your strength. It's through this test that both of you discover what the connection was truly built on: attachment or respect, desire or understanding. And once you see that clearly, you'll never confuse temporary attention for real affection again. When you stop contacting a woman, the way you handle that silence defines your value in her eyes. Most men make the mistake of thinking that constant communication keeps the bond alive. But in truth, it's respect that keeps attraction alive. The third key note, respect over neediness, explains one of the most powerful psychological principles in relationships. People value what they must earn, not what's handed to them freely. When you stop chasing and instead show calm confidence, you communicate strength, boundaries, and emotional maturity, traits that women subconsciously admire and respect. Neediness is not always loud. It's not just begging, pleading, or overexting. Sometimes it's the subtle act of always being available, always replying instantly, or trying too hard to prove your worth. When a man does this, he unknowingly lowers his emotional value. A woman starts to feel that she's the center of his world. And when that happens, curiosity fades, mystery dies, and attraction slowly disappears. Respect, however, grows in the presence of boundaries. When a man values his time, his peace, and his purpose more than the need for approval, it sends a silent message: I am whole without you. That energy is magnetic. When you stop contacting her, it's not about ignoring her. It's about realigning yourself. It's about stepping back from emotional dependency and showing that your world doesn't collapse without her attention. This shift instantly changes the dynamic. A woman who once took your presence for granted begins to question what changed. The man who was always available suddenly seems busy, focused, and in control. That shift from neediness to self-respect transforms how she perceives you. Psychology teaches us that scarcity increases value. The less accessible you are, the more significance your presence holds. A man who leads with neediness sends a message of insecurity. I need you to validate my worth. But a man who operates from respect communicates strength. I know my worth whether you see it or not. That's the difference between a connection based on desperation and one built on mutual admiration. Women are naturally drawn to men who hold emotional discipline. It doesn't mean you stop caring or feeling. It means you control how much of your energy you give away. The moment you stop chasing validation and start protecting your energy, you shift from seeking love to attracting it. Neediness also comes from fear, the fear of losing her, the fear of being alone, the fear of rejection. But those fears are illusions. When you act out of fear, you become predictable and emotionally reactive. When you act out of respect, you become calm, composed, and grounded. That difference changes everything. A woman may test your emotions when you pull away. She might ignore you back, act distant, or play hard to get, but that's where your strength is tested. Do you panic and rush back into contact, or do you remain centered and patient? The one who respects himself will never break his peace to prove a point. In the long run, relationships built on respect last longer and feel deeper. When a woman respects you, she listens differently, communicates more honestly, and values your presence. When she senses neediness, she loses emotional safety and begins to detach. The more you chase, the further she runs. But the more you respect yourself, the more she's drawn to understand your silence. That's the paradox. You gain more connection by being less dependent. So when you stop contacting her, do it from a place of inner strength, not pride. Don't use silence as punishment. Use it as peace. Let your distance speak for your discipline. Because the man who can walk away calmly is the man every woman remembers. In that silence, you're not proving a point. You're reminding her. That respect will always be more attractive than neediness. And in the end, that's the difference between being desired temporarily and being valued deeply. Self-worth speaks louder than words, louder than effort, and louder than any message you could ever send. When a man truly understands his value, he no longer feels the need to prove himself through constant attention or validation. The fourth keynote, self-worth speaks louder, captures one of the deepest psychological truths in human relationships. People are naturally drawn to those who value themselves. When you stop contacting a woman, your self-worth becomes the loudest message she hears. It tells her that your world doesn't revolve around her approval, that your peace is not dependent on her attention, and that your confidence stands firm even in silence. In relationships, energy speaks before words do. When a man carries insecurity within him, a woman feels it instantly, even through text, even in conversation. Neediness, desperation, or over-effort carry an emotional frequency that says, "I need you to complete me." But when a man values himself, his presence carries a calm assurance that says, "I'm already complete." That difference changes how a woman perceives and responds to him. True self-worth doesn't need to demand respect. It naturally attracts it. When you step back from chasing or over-communicating, you show that your attention is not for free. It's earned through mutual respect and emotional connection. That energy is powerful because it reflects self-control. And self-control is one of the rarest and most attractive traits a man can possess. Women may not always articulate it, but they deeply admire a man who can hold his emotions with balance. A man who can walk away without bitterness is far more respected than one who clings out of fear. When you stop contacting her, your silence it'll speak volumes. A woman who truly values you will feel your absence and start reflecting. She'll notice the difference between men who chase and the man who chooses peace. Your self-worth becomes a reminder of what she might lose. A stable, emotionally intelligent man who doesn't beg for attention. In that realization, attraction begins to rebuild itself naturally because nothing draws a woman closer than a man who can stand alone. However, many men misunderstand self-worth. It's not arrogance. It's not pretending not to care. True self-worth comes from emotional maturity, from knowing your boundaries, your intentions, and your value in a relationship. It's the awareness that love should never cost you your dignity. You can love deeply, care sincerely, and still choose to walk away when the energy isn't reciprocated. That's what makes your silence powerful. It's not a weapon. It's wisdom. When a man loses self-worth, he becomes reactive. He texts out of anxiety, overthinks her responses, and seeks constant reassurance. But when he values himself, he moves with certainty. He knows that if something is meant for him, it won't require him to chase or beg. His energy becomes grounded, and grounded energy attracts clarity. Women are emotional beings who feel drawn to stability, not just financial, but emotional stability. When she senses that you are emotionally secure, her respect for you multiplies. Your self-worth also influences the kind of relationship you attract. When you operate from insecurity, you attract people who feed on it. But when you operate from strength, you attract people who match it. That's why pulling back and valuing yourself isn't just about getting her attention. It's about resetting your energy to align with respect-based connections. A man who stands in his worth doesn't chase love, he inspires it. So when you stop contacting her, remember that your silence is not weakness. It's self-respect in action. You're not withdrawing to punish her. You're protecting your peace. You're showing that your energy is sacred and should only be shared with someone who values it equally. The man who understands this truth never loses anything by walking away, because even if she doesn't come back, his dignity remains. And that's something no relationship should ever take from you. In the end, your self-worth will always speak louder than your words, your silence, or your effort. It will define not only how she sees you, but how you see yourself. And that's where real power begins. Sometimes stepping back is not about giving up. It's about gaining clarity. The fifth keynote, silence creates clarity, carries a truth that most people overlook in relationships. In a world filled with noise, constant communication, and emotional chaos, silence has become rare. Yet it is in silence that true understanding emerges. When you stop contacting a woman, your absence allows both of you to see things more clearly. Not through emotions or impulse, but through reflection and perspective. Silence creates space, and that space reveals truth. When you are always talking, explaining, or chasing, there's no room for the other person to feel your absence or process their emotions. You fill every gap with your effort, leaving no time for her to realize what you mean to her. But when you go silent, something shifts. She begins to feel the emotional emptiness that your presence once filled. It's no longer about the words you said, but about the energy you brought into her life. Silence forces her to look at what she truly feels. Does she miss you, or was she just comfortable with the attention? Does she want you, or did she only enjoy being wanted? That's the power of silence. It answers these questions without you having to say a single word. Psychologically, silence activates introspection. When a person loses consistent emotional input, their brain tries to restore balance by analyzing what changed. This leads to refire selection and emotional realization. If she truly cares, your silence will make her question herself. Why do I feel uneasy without him? But if she doesn't value you, she'll feel relief instead of loss. Either way, you gain clarity. You no longer need to guess how she feels because her reaction to your silence will reveal it all. For you, silence also becomes a mirror. It allows you to step back from emotional attachment and see the situation for what it really is. When you're constantly chasing or trying to fix things, your emotions cloud your judgment. You start ignoring red flags, overlooking disrespect, and convincing yourself that things are fine. But when you go quiet, you see with new eyes. You realize who reached out and who didn't. You see who valued your energy and who only used it. Silence doesn't just bring clarity about her. It brings clarity about yourself. It teaches you where you've been giving too much and where you need to protect your peace. This is why silence is so powerful. It allows the emotional dust to settle. It takes you out of the chaos of reactions and puts you in the calm of understanding. It gives both people the time to assess whether the connection was based on genuine affection or emotional dependency. A woman who truly respects and admires you will eventually break the silence, not out of ego, but out of realization. She'll come back not because she misses attention, but because she misses you. But if she stays silent, that too is an answer, one that gives you freedom to move forward without confusion. It's also important to remember that silence should never be used as punishment. It's not about making her chase you or feel guilty. It's about allowing natural truth to surface. Silence should come from a place of peace, not pride. When you detach with dignity, the clarity that follows is pure. You'll no longer question why you stand or what she feels, because her actions in your absence will show it all. So when you stop contacting her, don't see it as the end. See it as the beginning of understanding. Your silence will reveal what words couldn't. It will show you who values your presence and who only valued your effort. And once you have that clarity, you'll never need to chase answers again, because silence, when grounded in self-respect, always tells you the truth, not just about her, but about yourself and what you truly deserve.